Hello and welcome to our latest episode of Sustainable Conversations. My name is Olivia Hart and I'm the Senior Researcher for the Legal 500's Global Green Guide. I'm kindly joined here today by Dr. Tadas Zukas to share his valued insights on understanding and mitigating greenwashing risks in sustainable finance. Dr. Zukas serves as Global Lead and Senior Counsel on Sustainability and ESG at Vontobel in Zurich, Switzerland. In his specialized ESG in-house counsel role, Dr. Zukas covers a range of sustainability-related areas, including greenwashing risk awareness and prevention. Prior to joining Vontobel, he held senior legal counsel roles at UBS and Julius Baer. Dr. Zukas is a member of the Swiss Banking Association's working group on sustainable finance as well, and teaches a master's level class on regulatory aspects of greenwashing risk at Zurich University as part of its sustainable finance program. He opened the Europa Institute's special luncheon series last year with a speech on sustainable investment, and in November he spoke at Zurich University's event on sustainable finance, the regulatory concepts of greenwashing under EU law. This is something which he has just co-authored a deep dive paper on too. So without further ado, let's dive straight in.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you for the kind introduction and looking forward to your questions.
Brilliant. How do sustainable finance regulations define greenwashing, and why are regulators paying increasing attention to this topic?
I think we are meeting at a great time to discuss this question, both from the perspective of kind of sustainable finance as an academic discipline and business area, and then also from the regulatory perspective, because there was quite a lot going on the regulatory front in the course of actually this and past year. So the timing is great. I'm really happy to join the sustainable conversations, and thank you so much for the invitation. So what we actually see is actually in fact emerging definitions, regulatory definitions of greenwashing around the world. Even global standard setting bodies such as IOSCO are actually joining the conversation. But here I have to kind of add an important point. There is no global uniform kind of official regulatory definition of greenwashing, although we see, so if you would be like to have kind of regulatory definition, you have to look into the regional jurisdictions or separate countries to find them. The most prominent example, and perhaps I will use that example just to illustrate you how the field develops, is the European Union Sustainable Finance Action Plan, under which actually something really very important happened basically in the course of last year. And I call that phenomenon that, the regulatory tsunami that we have in sustainable finance actually hit the topic of greenwashing. And what that means is actually that five regulatory definitions of greenwashing have emerged under the new European Sustainable Finance regulatory architecture. Part of those definitions are in the regulations themselves. So the taxonomy regulation has a own definition of greenwashing. Then there is a definition under the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, level 2. And then MiFID II delegated regulation also includes a definition of greenwashing. And then, in addition to that, there are definitions to be found in the political documents closely related to the European Union Sustainable Finance Action Plan, such as the Sustainable Finance Strategy of last year. So, kind of going more directly to trying to answer your question. These are different definitions. They are each of them addressing actually a separate aspect of the greenwashing phenomenon for purposes of that, of each regulation. So, that's kind of, there is no uniform definition. And what they actually have in common, that they all address the phenomenon of kind of making unsubstantiated sustainability-related claims, and then practices of trying to gain unfair competitive advantage by making kind of over-promising in the sustainability field, or trying to portray yourself as more sustainable than you actually are. What is very special actually about those definitions, actually, that they are counterintuitive, partly in the sense that they do not only address green claims, but actually go beyond green claims and actually address ESG-related, sustainability-related claims. So technically we could call the phenomenon even ESG washing or sustainability washing, but there's just this convention that we call it greenwashing, and the regulator actually continues with that. What is also very special, if you look precisely at those definitions, is that they not only address the area of marketing, which is usually kind of associated with, highest risk area for greenwashing risk, but they also address such areas as recommending a financial product or even reporting on the product's performance. Also very important, those definitions are not only limited to products, but they also actually starting to expand towards the corporate reporting field, which I think will be the next phase, and it's really kind of interesting to observe that. Now, these are the 5 definitions that we already have. As I mentioned, no uniform, no kind of single definition. And there was a very important development beginning actually of this year, where ESMA, the European Financial Markets Regulator, actually came up with their sustainable finance roadmap for the coming 3 years. And there, this is the very important document for ESG community. They announced that tackling greenwashing will be their priority #1 topic. And I mean, important document because of that, and well-known document because of that. But if you have not read the document in detail, I would really recommend also to our listeners to read that document. Just, it gives you access to the regulators' thinking actually in the topic, and you will be partly surprised how nuanced and how broad regulators' thoughts are actually on the topic. So really, really recommend reading that. What that document actually kicked off is a process of they are openly saying, the regulators are saying they are in process to gaining a in-depth understanding of the phenomenon. So they have started evidence gathering process this fall and promised to deliver an intermediate report on greenwashing in May next year, and then a final report in May 2024, where we hopefully will see uniform one definition valid for everyone. But having said that, very important to keep in mind, we already, under the current framework, we have several aspects of greenwashing addressed through various definitions or descriptions of the phenomenon in the already existing regulation. So that's the to close the European part. And then, since I mentioned that some countries are also very active in this field, I just want to say Switzerland, the FINMA, our financial markets regulator, has issued guidance on prevention of greenwashing in November last year, and FCA, the UK's regulator, about which you certainly know much more than me, has greenwashing prevention and kind of general anti-greenwashing regime as a big part of their planned regulatory architecture for the sustainable finance field. So that's a bit of a long answer to your first question. Sorry for that.
No problem. And which practices have a high greenwashing risk? And how do you think organizations can mitigate or avoid these?
So for the first question, obviously the question which keeps most practitioners busy actually every day, because it's the most relevant question, right? Which practices are most risky? And if you kind of take a step back and recall, some key elements of the definitions. I said making unsubstantiated sustainability claims is something, which is a kind of core element of each greenwashing definition. And so, don't make, practices where you would just state something, say something about your green ESG credentials, which is not true, or is kind of a bit of a better version of what is actually happening in reality. I think that those are obviously risky practices. And then, just making obviously false statements in the ESG field is as risky as making those in other fields. So if you say that you, let's say, integrate ESG and you don't do that in reality, it's obviously as problematic as if you do that in any other field. So these are kind of, I would say, the few examples of these risky practices. And the second part of your question was about how to best mitigate those risks and avoid those practices, right? So I think here it is really essential, since the field is increasingly really heavily regulated, that you first understand key concepts, at least key concepts with regulatory relevance. So sustainable investment, green investment, net zero, climate neutrality, you have to know them and know that laws address them. So this is, I would say, that the kind of first step in mitigating the risk. That you need to be aware that the field is rather becoming more and more complex and nuanced. And then, understand obviously the risks. Understand that greenwashing is not just something abstract, but there is there are definitions of the concept in regulations, and obviously it needs to be avoided. So you have to develop your internal know-how in this field. And then in terms of a practical advice, I would say you have to be, when you are making sustainability related claims, you should be as precise as possible. You should be really factually correct. You should be ensured that you are walking the talk. Ideally, actually, I would say even you should be walking the walk. And then, when you are talking about that, you are just already telling about what you are doing, and not kind of starting with talk and then putting pressure onto everyone to kind of to deliver. So I hope that helps a bit to kind of understand the point.
Brilliant, thank you. And why is greenwashing prevention so essential for sustainable finance?
Here I would, obviously great question. And I think like various jurisdictions really differ in this field. Like some of them are really very ambitious and have, like the European Union, more than 2,000 pages, I think, of new regulations, which came up basically in the course of last 2-3 years. And so they kind of in their political planning documents, they would set ambitions in the sustainable finance field. So the European Union Sustainable Finance document would say at the beginning that we pursue actually 3 purposes with that entire regulatory framework. And this is reorient capital flows towards more sustainable investments, improve risk management, and then increase transparency, increase long-termism. So, obviously, looking from that perspective, greenwashing, damages all those objectives and makes it more difficult to achieve them. But in jurisdictions where there's, let's say, not so much regulation, I would say, the supervisory authorities are just generally interested that, the trust in the market is maintained, and if certain claims are made to investors which are, interested, for example, to contribute to solving some of our planet's and society's challenges, such as climate change, that these products then also deliver what they promise. So I think independently of kind of the regulatory framework, we have this increased attention by the regulators towards this topic, and they are just interested, actually primarily, I would even say, I mentioned this at the outset, that the field has moved from niche to mainstream, and that's because this is a kind of a mainstream investment field. In the meantime, regulators are looking at it.
Thank you. And how can we safely set ambitious ESG targets in this era of greenwashing?
The most difficult question for the end. Thank you, Olivia. I think here I will try to kind of answer it by saying that there is one way to answer it, kind of short answer and long answer. So obviously, the most important thing is in this field to kind of to navigate this complex field is to have well qualified resources, people taking care of this business area, and in this case, like setting ambition. So you have to ensure that, short answer would be, you have to have people who master the field doing ESG, and not just people who perhaps not know so much about that. And especially with regard to ambitions, this is particularly important. This is done by real experts. And the long answer would be, you have to know, I already said this, part of that. I mean, you have, when setting ambitions, for example, in climate net zero field, have to really understand that most of the concepts are actually defined in law. So you have to have this awareness that most of the concepts will have some kind of regulatory relevance. And then you have obviously understand the risks of overstating and risk of making claims that that will not be true, or you will not be able to kind of walk the talk afterwards. So that risk awareness should be there, and then I think as I mean, also here, obviously, under the long answer, key is that you have people who really understand the field, that they are actually covering it, and then that information should be actually spread throughout the organization. You should organize awareness sessions on the topic so that people you know, understand the field, and then, you know, basically walk the talk. I already mentioned this aspect at the outset, that, you know, kind of in terms of a practical recommendation, be as precise as possible when setting those ambitions, be clear, and yeah, I think this is, and then I would even add, be as nuanced as possible, because some of the concepts are, you know, developing in such a rapid pace, actually, that, you know, perhaps something which is, you know, understood as ESG investing or sustainable investing in one jurisdiction would be understood differently in another. So be as nuanced as possible and transparent as possible as with regard to what you will deliver, and that should be actually a good kind of a good starting point, let's say. And then to close perhaps my answer, and for our viewers, I would say it's extremely important to have strong in-house legal knowledge and regulatory knowledge, because the field moves so quickly. I already mentioned that we have more than 2,000 pages just in the European Union alone in this field of regulations, and obviously you have to really have strong capacities internally to kind of tackle, to navigate that risk, and to help the organization to tackle that risk. Obviously, legal and regulatory is just one part, but very important one. So other fields obviously need to have the same level of knowledge and coverage. So that would be my answer. Hopefully, good enough for you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's such an interesting topic, and with such a varied and nuanced regulatory landscape, your insights are incredibly useful. So thank you so much for all of those today.
Thank you very much, Olivia, and thank you once again to Legal 500 for the invitation. Really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye.